Hey, folks, welcome to the Cripescast. This is the podcast where we talk to people for and or from the Midwest. We are powered by Everlight Solar, and here is today's episode. Hello, everybody. We got a very, very special live taping of the Cripescast coming up for you. This is all about big issues this election cycle. This is, you've heard it many places, and this year, it's actually true. This election is probably going to be the most consequential for your life in several different ways. And so we just wanted to give you an episode to inform you on the issues, make the best choice you can. The fellow I'm talking to, given that I think, journalism as a whole, it's hard to get like real good, unbiased information. I wanted to bring on Mike Wagner, who's been on the podcast before. We did a live Cripescast a couple years ago. I thought it was great. He is the director of the Center of Communication and Civic Renewal and the director of graduate studies at UW-Madison. His whole thing is journalism coming from an unbiased perspective, giving you as much information as you can so you can make the most informed choice that you can. And we had a good time. We had some beers and let the audience ask questions too. So we got a good mix of things in this podcast for you. I think you're going to enjoy it. Now, before you're like, oh my gosh, we're talking about politics, I'm turning this off. I know politics has that effect on a lot of people, especially right now. But we're really trying to just dive into the issues here. Whatever way you go, this is a podcast that's meant for people on both sides because it's really just we're talking about the issues. We're focusing on the things that are happening, not one politician or another politician. So just, if you can, try and keep an open mind. And if you hear something where you're like, that's wrong, let us know. Email us, cripescast@gmail.com, and we'll bring it up on the next podcast this coming week. We're going to do another episode just like this at Bavarium in Milwaukee. You can even come. You can get tickets. And all the proceeds are going to be donated, by the way. And we'll let you make your voice known, and we can discuss that issue. And that's the whole point of this, is that we just all keep an open mind. We have a healthy discussion, because I think what's going wrong in society, generally speaking, or what I've seen with my friends, is that nobody wants to talk about politics anymore. Nobody wants to have genuine conversations. And then what happens is the loudest, most extreme, most obnoxious voices get platforms, and then people are like, I guess that's our option, and that doesn't have to be the way. So we're just trying to bring in more conversation, and get out there and vote. That's really the big thing that matters. Just you making your voice heard. That's how democracy is done well. So get on out there, vote, and tell your polling worker I says hi. Also, folks, I'm going to be on the road this week. I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm in York, Glenside, Wilkes-Barre. It's going to be a fun set of shows. Come on out and see me if you're in Pennsylvania. And also, we're still raising money for Doctors Without Borders. Checking them out, doctorswithoutborders.org. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here is my conversation with Mike Wagner. All right, are you guys ready to welcome to the stage Mike Wagner? Give him a big round of applause. Get him up here, ladies and gentlemen. So, I got to ask you a question. How are you feeling about the last time you were here? I talked a lot of crap about the Vikings. I did, and I'm not sorry about that, but I am sorry you guys are doing so well this year. So,
good football teams don't have a history of losing to the Detroit Lions, which the Vikings just did on Sunday. So,
And I was kindly not going to bring that up.
I appreciate that.
I did. I was rooting for the Lions. I like the Lions more than any other team in the NFC North because they've really suffered through a lot. Do we have any Lions fans in the audience? All right, you hear that? Do we have any Bears fans in the audience? Okay. Find a Lions fan. They have a used paper bag that you guys can wear. I know you think your season's going okay now, but wait a couple weeks, all right? Mike, can you kind of give people your background and sort of, I know Indiana is in your past, UW, the other red and white, but let everyone know kind of your deal here.
Yeah, so I'm a professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication here at the UW. Before that, I was a professor at Nebraska. I also got my undergraduate degree in Nebraska, PhD at Indiana. So all the red and white Big Ten schools is my standard joke. Tried the rest at the best, that kind of thing. I'd been a reporter and worked on political campaigns before I did all of that stuff. And so I've been around politics and elections and the news my whole life, and now I study it and teach students about it.
That's awesome. Now, just to give you guys a sense of how this is going to go tonight, I have in my pocket some questions, okay? But if you guys have any questions, Colleen Maraca, my producer,
and my former student.
And your former student. Give her a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Colleen Maraca, I don't know where she is. But if you do have a question throughout the course of this, raise your hand, and we'll try to plug those in here, too. And if we don't get any hands raised, I'll just ask you at the end if you have any. So feel free to jump in at any time, but let's hop into this. So first thing, what do you think are the biggest issues people should be paying attention to this election season?
It is a really important one. I mean, it's always something you hear, this election's the most important election of your lifetime, and most times that's not true. It's something that we say to try to encourage people to pay attention and show up to vote. But in this particular case, lots of really important things are on the ballot at the federal level and at the state level and even at the local level. And so we have democracy itself in many ways being on the ballot. We have reproductive rights on the ballot. We have questions about immigration on the ballot. We have a president who's going to inherit a war in Ukraine and a war in Gaza and other places that are simmering around both of those places and other places. And so it's a pretty consequential time to be paying careful attention about what it is we're going to do. And so those are all big issues right now. Inflation, I suppose, is another one. So how we spend our money and how far it goes, how safe we're going to be, how safe the rest of the world's going to be, what rights do we have with our own body, and are we going to live in a country that respects the outcome of elections? Those are the big things, I would say.
All right. Well, yeah, that's no shortage of issues there, my guy. No, well, I think the one thing that they always say people vote on is the economy. And the U.S. economy, you see the stock market, it goes up. I mean, it's had a couple down days, but it's by and large up. And yet still inflation is high. It's hard for people to get groceries. How are we balancing those two things? Is this just the widening gap between the rich and the poor? Is it tech stocks are supporting the general drive of the S&P and the NASDAQ and everything?
Wow. Well done.
Did I just ask a question and then answer it? That is terrible.
I would say, we're still recovering in some ways from COVID and all the things that happened to the supply chain globally, which affected inflation globally. And so that wasn't just a U.S. problem. We recovered faster than almost everywhere else, but we're not all feeling it in the same way, largely on the backs of income inequality and some of these other issues you were raising. And so, economic change is slow. It takes us a long time to feel it when things start to get better. It takes most of us, a long time to feel it because we're not super wealthy. And, those of us who are Midwest cheap feel this as it comes, a little bit later.
Yeah, and so you have both candidates out there, Harris and Trump, saying that their economic plan is going to be better for the rest of us. What do the economists, what do the experts say about this situation?
So economists are also kind of polarized like the country. And so some are really pushing tax cuts for the most advantaged of us. Most economic forecasts and most economic predictions about the two plans say that Harris's is probably on balance a little bit better for the middle class. Neither economic plan is very good for the very poor, and Trump's is better for the very wealthy.
Got it. Okay. Now, we always hear about the debt, the national debt, and how we got to pay that down, and none of us are going to have Social Security. By the way, you guys should really save your money for that whole situation. We're screwed, all right? That's what I've taken away. But, is there any hope, or is it just like climate change where, we're just going to ignore it and then have a bunch of financial hurricanes and be like, it's the weather?
As a college professor, I've noticed that, many students often wait. I tell them they're under no obligation to wait until the night before to start their assignment, but many do. And that's how we often are as a country when it comes to trying to solve big problems like climate change, where if we do the stuff now, the politicians who made us do it will not benefit because we'll have to pay more money and things will be frustrating. And the benefit will come in 20 years. And so politicians want to do things where the benefit is in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. And so to save Social Security, to roll back the problems of climate change requires politicians to look forward in a way that they tend not to. And one reason that they don't is that we reward people who give us stuff now, not people who give us stuff later.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you look at, we hear that Democrats are better for the environment. Is that true in terms of our use of fossil fuels? Have Democrats done enough on the environment that people who are curious about the environment, or that's their main voting issue, that they have reason to keep voting for Democrats?
I would say they've done more than Republicans when it comes to regulating fossil fuels, trying to find creative ways to find alternative energies, trying to find ways to make it less economically advantageous to burn oil for all the things that we burn oil for. But I think even most Democrats would say, no, they haven't done enough. As the current president liked to say when he was still running for president, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And so his view was we're doing more than the other side, but that's not a great slogan. We're slightly better than the other side is not a thing that motivates most of us to want to show up and do something.
And is there a way to change sort of that general thing about politicians only caring about like the next few months? And does this come down largely to like money in politics? I mean, you've got the lobbying that goes on with Congress. Like a lot of times big businesses don't really care if it's a Democrat or Republican running. They know they can go to K Street and bribe the shit out of them, and everything's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the top givers of kind of, political action money to both parties, and it's roughly the same groups that are near the top of that list who just give to both sides. And then some are more ideological in their giving. And so money definitely matters. That's one reason this is the case. But, another reason that it is the case is just that change is hard. Most humans don't love change. It's hard to try to persuade folks to take a big risk on things, and sometimes the consequences are huge. You think about times when there were huge changes. So, the beginning and end of the Civil War, where there were lots of huge changes around that, or the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Like those things came with huge consequences. The red state, blue state map of the United States changed completely over a course of 2 decades after the passing of the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act. So some of these things have catastrophic or outstanding, depending upon your point of view, consequences for both political parties and the people that they represent.
Got it. And in terms of the money in politics, let's just look at the money in this election cycle. I think you have a bunch of things going on. Both Democrats and Republicans have spent hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it's over $1 billion that
$1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion dollars that we've funneled into TV ads. Hey, do you guys like those TV ads? Who does it serve,
Charlie Barron says he's funny, but is he really?
Is he really? I think he's a hack comedian. Don't go see his show. You guys didn't see that ad because you're all here. I mean, they must work. Do they work, the political ads?
They do a few things. So negative ads, things that make us afraid, tend to make us search out for more information, right? So like you walk out on State Street and you hear rustling in the leaves, you pay some attention to it. If it's a person walking, you keep walking. If it's a large snake, you start paying attention to that and start to, maybe I've got to be faster than Charlie so I can get around this snake, right? And so negative ads make us attuned to, negative ads make us attuned to scary things, right? And they make us search for information, and they also can sometimes make you abandon your partisanship when you vote. Like if you know nothing else about a person, knowing which political party they favor, even if they barely favor it, you're picking who they vote for correctly 9.5 times out of 10. But a negative ad is one of those things that can get you to say, oh, maybe I need to learn about something else. Or they just make you hopeless and anxious and so upset that you decide not to participate anyway. So there's 2 ways that they're effective, neither of which are great for democracy, but they're effective.
And do you think that the idea, obviously all these ads, the way they got all this money is typically super PACs, right? Are pumping out a lot of these in the campaigns?
Super PACs or just very, very wealthy individuals who want to participate privately, basically now, can do so. So there's lots of ways that money in politics can happen kind of outside of our view in ways that we can't observe. as directly as we could in the past when there were sharper and more stringent restrictions on how people could give.
Yeah, I don't get, because for a long time it was like you can't, if you're a corporation, you cannot donate more than X amount to a political candidate, or you can't donate, I forget exactly what
Yeah,
the
they had
rule
limits
was.
to how much you could give a candidate, to how much you could give a party, all that sort of thing.
But then they said, hey, if we just do this thing called like a super PAC, then you can donate millions and millions of dollars. Tax deductible, by the way.
And we won't know that it was you.
And you won't know
In many cases.
But like, does anybody in this audience want that? No. I don't think it's just, here. I feel like if you asked any audience, that nobody would want that. So why is it the case that that's the deal?
Well, one reason is politicians are risk averse, right? So we could try to persuade some folks to say, hey, stop trying to raise all of this money and run for office. And they'll say, oh, I would love to do that in an environment where my opponent airs 1,000 negative ads about me and I do nothing. Look at me losing with my principles. I'll go off and write my hit song, Alone with My Principles, which is a line from that thing you do.
Yeah, no, I caught that reference.
Yeah.
That
I wanted to
cool.
cite my source. I didn't want someone later to be like, you stole that joke. And so, politicians are not incentivized to experiment with not doing what they know works. And so unless both sides have to do it, it's very unlikely to happen.
Got it. So is there any way that you think could be a pathway? Like, I'm seeing a lot of hopeless faces out there, Mike. We got to give them something. Where's the hope in all this?
Well, one path are the courts. I think the U.S. Supreme Court is not a likely path to change these things.
They're all getting bribed too, Not all of them.
But in state politics, state Supreme Courts also can weigh in on some of these issues with races, that are more local, and so that might be a path to begin trying to roll back some of this. Also, some of it might just be rewarding politicians who speak out about these things. McCain-Feingold is the name of the campaign finance reform bill that's probably the most famous. And, one of those persons has passed away and the other is no longer in the Senate. No one has picked up that mantle in a really serious way.
Yeah, and we're also seeing it just getting more in your face. Like Elon Musk is doing this thing where he's giving away $100 to anyone to sign a petition to get someone. And then he's also giving away $1 million to one random person every single day. He's essentially, in my mind, buying some votes, but he found a little loophole, and so now it's like, yeah, no, that's legal-ish, And but what is your take on the Elon Musk thing? Because that feels like pretty in your face.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the things that's in a long list of things that are legal and horrible.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Legal and horrible. Yeah, give a big round of applause for legal and horrible. That's good. Let's talk about immigration. That's obviously one of the big issues that is on everybody's mind. And I think Democrats and Republicans will agree immigration is an issue that has to be addressed. Is Kamala Harris as bad at immigration as Republicans paint her to be?
No, I don't think so. I think, we have roughly, we think, 11 million people here who ought not be here legally. But about 8 million of them, by the best estimates, are working jobs that American citizens largely don't want to work. And so if we took out 4 to 8% of our workforce immediately, that would have catastrophic effects on our economy. And so there are practical reasons to kind of keep things as they are in some way or another. But it's also the case that, lots of folks are breaking the law and coming to the country in ways that they ought not come to the country and are coming in ways that are illegal. And the Biden administration has not been as aggressive about policing that as the Trump administration was.
Do you see that as sort of Harris will say, well, we got a bill together going through Congress, but did they act on that as, quickly as they should have, or why did they wait so long to get that bill going?
Harris is telling the truth about this on the campaign trail, which is that many Republican lawmakers were inclined to support this immigration bill that was somewhat bipartisan, and former President Trump asked Republicans not to support it because it's really the main issue that he talks about on the campaign trail. That's a political issue, and so that's how he started running in 2016. That's what he ran on in 2020, and that's what he's running on in 2024. And so he wanted that issue and didn't want the bill to pass, and enough of his Republican colleagues went along with that.
And how much of what they're saying is true with the border crossings during Trump's time versus the border crossings?
It's more now, yeah. The best estimates I've seen showed about a drop of about 1 million undocumented immigrants near the end of the Trump administration, so over the course of his term, as compared to the Biden administration, where that number went back up to a little over 11 million.
So you have hard facts there that Trump could say, I'm better with immigration enforcement, but then why?
Well, he could at least say there were fewer people here illegally. He could say that.
He can say that, but why not just say that instead of going to they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the geese. He was out there saying, what happened to the geese? There's just a bunch of hunters hiding their shotguns. I don't know. That was the Haitians, I'll tell you that much. Sure as shit wasn't me. Joe, they're on to us. Get the decoys out of the water.
Look, I think the truth about Donald Trump is that one of his greatest skills is directing our attention toward what he wants it to be on, and not what other people, especially his opponents, would like it to be on. And so when he does something that's starting to get negative attention and it looks like it might stick, they're eating the cats is the kind of thing that we start to hear. And we all gobble it up. We share the memes, news reporters cover it, and all of a sudden we're not talking about the thing that we were talking about before. He's very good at changing the subject. And I view it as a way of just trying to change the subject so that he doesn't have to deal with the thing that's been harder for him.
Got it. But then you have sort of a doubling down. Who came up with the dog cat situation? Where did that come from? Who started it?
To the best we can tell, there were some neighborhood conversations where people might have shared this idea.
Next door app?
It might have been, yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Because everything on there is true.
Absolutely. 100%. Take it to the bank, yeah.
Yeah.
And so once something like that gets a little bit of a life on social media, then political leaders who know it's probably not true and journalists who know that it's probably not true have a license to say, many people are talking about, and then insert weird thing here, right? In this case, many people are saying that immigrants in Shelbyville, Ohio were eating cats, or Springfield, whatever, Springfield, Ohio, are eating cats. And so, no, many people are not saying that. One person said it, and many people shared it, which is a different thing.
Todd, who went to the gas station and was like, are those Delta 8s legal? Took 3 of them and was like, I saw him eating cats out there, It's all from Delta 8, guys. Just legalize weed, all right? That Delta 8 is poison. It's poison. How do you think the McDonald's thing is going to translate?
I think like most things in American politics, people that don't like Trump will say, boy, I bet he didn't want to get asked about the minimum wage, and I bet he wouldn't be able to, make the change and things like that. And people like Trump say, look at that, a man of the people, taking some time out. People see what they want to see in those sorts of things.
Yeah, it is kind of one of those deals. A big thing everybody's talking about this election is that the bros are going to decide it. It's a bro election. Have you guys heard that? No? Okay. Well, it's what they're saying. Many people are saying the bros are going to decide this election.
Who makes better decisions than young white men? Honestly.
What's so funny?
As an old white guy, I don't mind saying.
Well, what is the deal with the bro vote?
Well, there's a couple things happening, I think, that are really interesting. And one of which is, and I see this on our campus, and I see this when I talk to my friends who are teaching students around the country. Younger men are increasingly disaffected from the political system, right? They recognize, okay, most people in power look a lot like me, and that's probably not good, that's probably not fair, that's not equitable. But I don't want to have to pay for the sins of the previous generations. I would like to have a chance to go to college and be successful. And then at the same time, there are places that will tell them, it's not really your fault if things are going bad for you. It's really the fault of, and then maybe it's Kamala Harris, or maybe it's women, or maybe it's the liberal media, or they'll just kind of give a boogeyman. And there are places where younger men are more inclined to get information, which coming in the form of podcasts, that are kind of appealing to a lifestyle that's a little political, but it's mostly other things. Like Joe Rogan's podcast, as an example, is extremely popular, and it's a lot about ultimate fighting and fitness and nutrition and comedy and breaking up your friends and making fun of them and having them make fun of you and all these kind of things. And then there's some politics, and then there's also a sprinkle of bizarre misinformation. And so the sprinkle of bizarre misinformation gets in there along with all of the other things that aren't really about politics. And so where people get their information makes a difference, and their increasing disaffection with the political system makes a difference. Younger men are among the least likely groups to think that what our leaders do will make their lives better in any appreciable way.
Okay, so, and actually when you're talking about the podcasts, I don't know who will listen to a podcast, guys, but you are seeing that people are a lot of the presidential candidates in this run, they're coming on podcasts as opposed to talking to the media, the traditional media.
That's right.
And so we're seeing this sort of truth and just standard journalist practices are kind of like not getting the spotlight. And what is getting the spotlight is podcast stuff.
Sure.
What is that doing to democracy, you think?
Well, I don't know that it's great for democracy, but I also think that there are some reasonable reasons that folks who listen to these podcasts have for wanting the hosts of these programs to vouch for candidates. Younger people have lived in a society that's been deeply polarized their whole lives. There's been kind of constant wars. There have been huge economic crashes. They see an intractable Congress where people cannot get along. And they're looking for leaders who they believe are authentic. And one thing that a lot of folks who host podcasts really prize is being real, being authentic. That's the really famous kind of female skewed podcast Kamala Harris went on. That's the case with the Joe Rogan Experience. People view the hosts as authentic. Like the whole, Kamala's brat, that was out. She's real, right? She's authentic. And that is a useful thing to know about our leaders. It's less useful to know than, are you competent? What are your ideas? How do you make decisions under pressure? Those are things we really want to know about our leaders, and we don't learn them from podcasts.
Well, and you're a journalism guy, so how does journalism find its way in this media that seems to care less and less about journalism?
Yeah, short of publicly funded journalism that would solve a lot of the economic problems in the economic model, I think journalists probably, it's hard to, I don't want to speak about them in mass. Lots of reporters are doing really good investigative work and doing really kind of heroic local news, trying to cover local issues, and also happens to be the sources that people trust the most. So there's lots of good things happening in journalism. But it's also the case that most newsrooms are getting smaller by the day. Newspapers are closing down. We're losing the kind of information that binds us together civically. Not all the stuff in the paper is about politics. It's about movies and shows like this and community events. And when we lose those things, we start to make it's easier for us to see what divides us and harder to see what unites us. And so journalists, I think, need to find a way back to being trusted sources of information. And it probably comes from being more fearless when it comes to just saying, these things these folks are saying are not true. And they will be upset, and they will threaten us, and we will continue to say that these things are not true when they're not true.
Yeah, because when you have a presidential candidate not go on, Harris was not doing interviews for a long time leading up, which I think that was problematic. And then Trump is, he turns down 60 Minutes talking because they're going to fact check him. But that is that's the whole point, dude. Otherwise do a rally, But why is that, that's just accepted by us? Is okay, he doesn't want to get fact-checked. Even in the debates, they don't want to get fact-checked. But, wouldn't a debate be way better if there was, a bullshit buzzer, It
would be fantastic.
And that's who won the debate. The guy who got the less amount of bullshit buzzers,
That would be a way better model than what we have now, honestly.
Let's do it.
I'm in.
You know? What? Yeah, I'm going to start making my bullshit buzzer. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I want to keep going on to a few different topics. One thing I thought that was really interesting, you guys heard my whole rant on artificial intelligence. Not one question about artificial intelligence in the debate, but artificial intelligence is a thing that's already driving society. It's already probably driving these wedges between us largely, because that AI is in your algorithm, so it shows you more of what you already see. That's how people go down the rabbit hole, as I've gone down the AI rabbit hole. But and then not just that, it's the workforce. You see these robots coming on. That's going to deplete the workforce in just the coming years. And nobody's talking about from the workforce standpoint. From the environmental standpoint, you had Google that was saying, hey, we are going to be carbon neutral by, I think, 2030. And then AI came along, and they're like, yeah, that's not happening. Because all these AI things take so much energy that Microsoft is reopening 3 Mile Island, right? Which, do you guys remember that from history class? Some bad happened there. I think it melted down. But they're going to give it another go. And... so environmentally, what would make sense is to take AI and say, all right, AI, help us fix the environment like ASAP before we like burn ourselves out of this planet. But instead we're saying like, let's let this robot water your plants. I can water my friggin' plants. Actually, I can't. I've killed many plants, guys. I have one living plant. It's a rubber plant. It doesn't need to be watered. But so many issues. And then I'm going to throw one more at you. Just answer the whole thing. China's looking at Taiwan. Taiwan's got all the semiconductors. Everything that makes AI is in Taiwan. And China's like right across the drink going, we are going to get these sons of bitches real soon. And that's going to happen. And we're distracted with two other huge conflicts. And I think China's going to be like, all right, now that they got all their Navy over here and this over in Russia, we're going to go take Taiwan. That's what I think is going to happen. But after that long-winded, rambling kind of question, what do you have to say for yourself?
I'm sorry, Charlie, I can't answer that. No. It's so complicated, right? I mean, in the amount of time it takes you to say to ChatGPT, write me an essay for my Journalism 200 class, when it gives you the response, that's taken more water than was in my beer, right? And so like that's just one thing, one time, not what's fueling these algorithms on social media or fueling the chat bots. When you want to talk, human being, please. I want to help you get your ticket on Delta. Human being, please. What's your flight number? I need to talk to a person. And they just, these things are happening constantly, right? And it's happening in an environment where the moneyed powers that be want this revolution because it'll mean fewer people they have to pay, right? It'll mean fewer workers. And that's a real issue. We haven't heard anybody really on the campaign trail talk about that because they, as you say, really haven't been asked very much about it. We don't know very much about the ethics of AI as a society. There are lots of people who study this and care about it, but most of us haven't thought about what happens when the algorithm or the artificial intelligence disagrees with what we want it to do as its programmer and creator. These are all open questions that we just don't know the answer to. But AI is already a huge part of our lives, from the stuff that we get on the stuff that we see on our social media feed, to the chat relationships we have, to when Google completes what it is you're searching for. Like, all these things are algorithmically trying to figure out how to best serve us from one point of view, which is to keep our attention, right? It's a best service, like you were saying before, like the doom scrolling, right? It's wanting to keep you on the platform, wanting to keep us not doing other kinds of things. There's not a great answer to this that we've heard from any of the people who represent us, and there certainly haven't been great answers from those who are running the companies that are doing these things.
Folks, excuse the interruption, but I want to let you know the Cripescast is presented and powered by Everlight Solar. The Cripescast studio has been powered by Everlight Solar for several years now. Let me tell you, it's been a constant and cost-effective power. If you're a regular Cripescast listener, you know that I am a big, I like fishing, so I like the environment, and this is one way to help my fishing for the future and help my kids fish. if I ever have kids one day in this hypothetical scenario. So anyways, it's also good for my bank account. So I can buy my kids fishing poles in said hypotheticals. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Go to everlightsolar.com for a free consultation, and you can see how solar panels can work for you. Also, if you're looking to upgrade your power tool selection this fall, look no further than the Fleet Farm. They've got a huge selection of hand tools, combos, drills, everything you can think of that goes in a tool bag from top brands like DeWalt, Craftsman, and Milwaukee. Oh, they got it. Plus, when you need a nice place to store those tools, they've got plenty of options for garage storage, or you can pick up a toolbox or bag to bring them on the go. Whether you're a beginner in the DIY world or a seasoned hardware vet, Fleet Farm has all the power tools and accessories you need to get the job done. Check them out at the Fleet Farm. And folks, it is still October, which means we got deals for you on Cripescast.com. Click on the merch section. We got a sale on all of the Tell Your Folks I Says Hi merch. So that's our part of our October sale. I can talk. All our Tell Your Folks I Says Hi merch is, real good deal. We got shirts, koozies, the whole shebang. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Cripescast.com or mantalkminute.com will get you there too. And also, we got our Patreon. Check it out, patreon.com/Charlie Barons for behind the scenes, first look at tickets, giveaways, and a whole lot more. All right, let's get back to my conversation with Mike Wagner.
And the thing about technology, it increases exponentially. So you guys might be on ChatGPT and you're like, write me this thing, and it kind of sucks, or it's like not quite there. But like in 6 months, the way technology rises, it's just going to be exponentially better, which isn't just like a little bit better, it's like way better. So in a very, very short period of time, we're going to turn around and it's all going to be there. I think that's very hard because the people who are supposed to be regulating it, it's Congress, and they're you just listen to those talks they had about social media. If you go back and you look at any of those congressional talks they had, it's like, oh man, we are so far from Kansas right now. Like, these guys are not even close to understanding what's going on.
They don't get what's happening, and they don't understand how good AI is at learning. And so, like, there's this really cool story that came out in the last week or so at the Washington Post, where if you were looking at it online, you could interact with it, and it would play you a clip from Donald Trump that was real and a clip that was AI. And it asked you, could you pick which one? And there are some things AI doesn't do well. AI doesn't stutter, right? So when people stutter in conversation, AI doesn't do that yet. But it's going to learn to do that to sound more natural. And so the things that we can do now to say, oh, that's an AI clip, not a real one, we're not going to be able to do in a year or 2 years.
Interesting. Yeah, and you're not going to be able to figure it out. And these robots are already taking jobs in warehouses. I feel like you're going to have a hollowing out of the middle class. I mean, is there anything that people in this audience can realistically do to at least raise issues for that? Like, if people are feeling hopeless about it, like, what can they do that's productive?
Well, I think they can demand that their lawmakers take this issue up at least and decide to talk about what kinds of protections might be in place for workers who are at risk for being, displaced, or which is a fancy way of saying fired by AI, right? There's probably some things that workers themselves can do to organize and try to get their management to find ways to protect them, to retrain them, to find ways to still be productive. I do a lot of flying for my job, and so I'll go and give a talk at a university or do research or something, and I've just noticed you can not have to talk to a human to get food at the airport anymore, which wasn't the case 2 years ago in most of the country. And so now you press a couple of buttons at the McDonald's and it all comes out and you never see a person. Like, these things are happening, as you say, it's hollowing out the middle class, it's hollowing out people who are also participating in the gig economy to try to find other ways to make ends meet.
I could keep diving down this rabbit hole for a long time, but I want to keep going a little bit. Let's talk about third-party candidates. We've got on Wisconsin, I think RFK is on the ballot. Jill Stein is on the ballot. RFK has dropped out. Jill Stein says she's not dropping out, and she's actually made a lot of ground in the Midwest, specifically Michigan, where there's a very large Arab American population who is obviously not happy that we are just giving Netanyahu kind of a blank check for bombs. And so it's sort of, you can see how you can lose Michigan real quick. That's 200, 300,000 votes. Biden won by, I think, 150,000 or something the last election. It's going to be very tight. So, and a lot of those folks are going the way of Jill Stein. But you also have Trump, who's been very clear that he will support Israel 110%, whatever. So it's probably going to be worse with Trump. And yet you can't ignore what's been happening over the past year with respect to a terrible thing happened, so awful what happened to Israel. But Israel's response, if you look at the number of dead people, has been exponentially higher. So it's hard for people to navigate this. But what's your thought in terms of third-party candidates?
Third-party candidates usually do best when there's one issue that they can kind of corner the market on, so to speak, and an issue that is to the extreme side of the candidate from one of the two major parties. So Ralph Nader and the environment, as an example, in 2000, Jill Stein talking about this issue, in 2024. And so trying to find a way to siphon off enough voters from one side to be able to continue getting on the ballot in the future and can maybe try to do some things that can help the Green Party build itself. But yeah, it has the functional, pragmatic outcome of hurting the Harris campaign without question. Whereas like the RFK one is, that seemed to be kind of pulling roughly equally, maybe a little bit more from Trump supporters. Again, neither of these folks are getting a lot of votes, but Wisconsin was decided by just over 20,000 votes in the last presidential election. And so changing that many people's minds over one thing when the functional difference between the two candidates isn't enormous seems like a strange choice.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to one of my buddies. He's Syrian, and he obviously the Middle East is a huge issue for him. And he was saying he wants to vote Jill Stein because if she gets 5% of the votes, then they get funding. The third party gets funding the next go round. That's sort of that logic. What can you explain what that is for people who don't understand?
Yeah, it's hard to get on the ballot. The two major parties make it hard for third parties to get on the ballot because in a society where one more vote than the other side wins everything, the incentive is to make it so that there are two parties on the ballot, which maximizes your chances of getting one more vote than the other side. And so they really want to make it hard in general for third parties to get on the ballot. And then they're selective about that philosophy when there's a third party candidate that might pull from the other side in a particular state or in a particular race. And so, yeah, the Green Party wants to get that funding. It's super unlikely to happen, but that seems to be among their goals.
With all these issues going on around the world, especially the conflicts, in Ukraine and Russia and, Israel, all that, there's so much information and misinformation. And that's really actually something that travels across all these issues where you can be super on one side of it and find yourself down the rabbit hole. And how could anyone think the other way? And I think just for people out there who are trying to get a balanced view of what's going on, how can people have a healthy media diet?
Yeah, I think the first thing I think people need to try and do is become more familiar with the phrase, "I don't know." We're so certain about so many things, and much of the world is uncertain, and much of the predictions that politicians we like and politicians we dislike make are guesses at best. And so part of what needs to happen is I think we need to be more open to the idea that we might not know everything. We might be wrong about some things. And in the research into this is one of the things I study. People who are willing to admit they don't know are way more likely to learn things from the news media and come to believe more things that are verifiably true. People who are really knowledgeable but have a really low trust for the news are the most likely to believe in conspiracy theories because they have enough knowledge to be able to spin stories for why the thing that happened should not have happened to their side. And so we need to find a range of sources that aren't just telling us our side is great and the other side is the devil. I think it's one thing we can do. Another thing is to try to talk to people who are a little bit different than us politically. In Wisconsin, when I moved here in 2012, 1 in 3 of us had stopped talking politics, but would talk about other things with our friends. And in 2022, when we repeated that survey around the midterm elections, it was 60% who'd stopped talking politics. And it was 20% who just cut people out of their lives altogether. And so they're just saying, we disagree, you're out. And, sometimes that's reasonable. Like if you say, if you said to me, you're a professor and you're hell-bent on indoctrinating my students and you shouldn't be able to live and I can't wait for your house to burn down. Maybe I cut you out of my life and that's reasonable. But if you say...
Cut your uncle out of your life? Yeah. What the hell are you doing?
But if you say to me, I disagree about tax policy, we disagree about AI policy, we disagree about the environment, but we can still be friends, too many of us are turning our backs on folks who disagree with us, but aren't impugning our right to live as a citizen or those sorts of things. And so I think we need to talk to people who are different than us. We need to seek out sources that do more than just tell us that we're right and the other side's wrong.
Got it. Yeah, give them a big round of applause for that. At this point, I know I said I'd wait if any of you guys had questions. I didn't see anyone have questions. Does anyone have questions that they want to throw out there real quick? It's nice and dark. No one will see. Yeah, sir, go ahead. Hang on. And then Colleen's got a microphone around there somewhere. She can come to you, too.
I can
What's
do
your
it.
name? Where are you from?
I'm Terry. I'm from Cottage Grove.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
From Iowa.
Originally from Iowa. Good for you. Yeah.
Student loans. We talk about forgiveness and it polarizes people and all that. How come nobody says let's just move it to 1% interest rate?
1% interest rate on the... Or 0% interest rate. Let's
These
talk
are
about the
other
student loans.
solutions that our leaders would be free to propose, right? And what we don't see that sort of thing happening. Yeah, that's. I'm not sure why that is. Probably because but I think the calculation would be, if we can forgive the loans for those who want them forgiven, then that's going to really make the folks who got them forgiven happy and continue to vote for us. And it'll probably have a bunch of other ancillary benefits that they'll spend money on things that aren't student loans anymore, probably local businesses or Amazon, if we're being honest, right? But then if you don't want to do it, then you're exacerbating this problem, making it more and more expensive to go to college and making it harder and harder for people to ever get, making ends meet. So there are these pragmatic middle of the road things that don't have the juice that they had in the 70s and 80s and even early 90s.
And that's because as soon as you probably start talking about percentages on student loan, as soon as you said percentage, I heard 5 people fall asleep, because anything involving numbers, it's better to talk about the cats and the dogs. I really got to work on my impression. But
We got one right here.
That's a great
Yeah,
question. Thank you very much for that.
Hey, can you hear me? We got one right here.
Oh, yeah.
Right in front of you, up here.
Okay,
There
I
you
got
are.
it.
I'm Chris from Waterloo. Could you speak?
Hey,
could you
Chris,
speak?
Waterloo.
Could you speak about the amendment to the Constitution?
The amendment to the Constitution. Which one are we talking
In-
about
in-
there?
in
my guy?
Wisconsin. In
There's
Wisconsin.
a few of them, I think.
The proposed amendment. I'm sorry, about the change in the one word.
Change in the
Yeah,
law.
I mean, I'm not a legal expert, so I should probably just stop talking there, but I won't. And maybe I know a legal expert who's here, so you just yell out if I'm wrong. So I think this doesn't functionally change too much in a practical way, but it seems targeted at a group of people.
Can we actually back up just a little bit?
Oh, so there's
I'm
a there's-
stupid.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what
yeah.
we're talking about right now.
So
and I'm hosting the damn
presently,
thing, so.
presently, Wisconsin's constitution limits who can vote. The amendment makes that even clearer, but doesn't change it. Basically, am I wrong?
Where the hell's our legal scholar at? Are you the legal scholar?
Yeah.
Are you involved in legal? Come on up here. Answer this damn question. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Jeff does great legal.
Okay.
Great legal.
Here, come up on stage so people can see you here.
Sorry.
All right. It is illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal and state elections in the United States and in every state in the United States. That has not always been the case. If you go back to statehood here in Wisconsin, almost no one who lived here was a United States citizen. And so what you needed to do to vote was you needed to say, I intend to become a citizen. And you could vote in Wisconsin elections. A long time ago, like a century ago, we changed that. And so the Wisconsin Constitution now says everyone in the state of Wisconsin who is a citizen is eligible to vote. The proposed amendment would change that. So instead of saying everyone who is a citizen is entitled to vote, it would say only citizens are entitled to vote. But as I already said, it is already illegal for non-citizens to vote. And think about this, right? 3.3 million people just in the state of Wisconsin voted in 2020 in the presidential election. So the benefit, if you are not legally in this country, of trying to vote is extremely slim, right? We have close elections. We don't very often have elections decided by one vote. The penalties are immense. So as Mike said, this is really a solution in search of a problem. We don't have a problem. No one can show that there are non-citizens voting in Wisconsin. No one can show that there are non-citizens really voting anywhere in the country. And this is really just another political talking point.
All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
It's very rare that I was relatively right when talking about the law, so I feel good about that.
Yeah, you were on point in retrospect, you know?
Yeah.
I like that we can ask the audience for questions and answers. This is great.
That's right.
This is friggin'
Are there any
awesome.
medical doctors? This is sore, and I can't.
Yeah.
Charlie, we got one more over here.
Yeah, sure.
To your left, I think.
Okay.
No, or right.
Right? Yeah,
Oh,
my
here.
other left.
Sorry, other.
We didn't cover left and right in J201, so it's okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So as a communications expert, Mike, so over the last several weeks, we've had, a ramp up in text messages, in ads that we've seen. We had a J.D. Vance, Tim Walz debate. We've had a Kamala Harris and Donald Trump debate. As far as the communications coming from both sides here, from the Republicans and Democrats, do you feel like there has been a change in momentum for either political party based on the communications that they're putting out there? Do you think, the debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance helped one party or the other as far as the ads that we're seeing? Do you see momentum for either party based on their communications in the last couple weeks, month here?
That's a great question. Not really. I would say the Walz Vance debate really didn't matter in terms of people's vote choice. It was a temporary, relatively genteel, compared to other debates we've seen in the last couple of years, reset in a way, but it really didn't change anybody's vote choice. It didn't bring more people into wanting to vote. It didn't get people more enthusiastic about the election or anything like that. We've really seen kind of lurches of momentum amongst this very small pocket of people who say they aren't sure about who they're going to vote for, and another small group of people who haven't yet decided if they're going to vote. And so one thing that's happened as this race has gotten even closer over the last couple of weeks is the Trump messaging on immigration has become much more strident and stark. And that has helped with some voters on the one hand. And then the Harris messaging about Trump's mental facility has also become sharper and stark, and that's kind of helped on the other hand. And so a lot of it continues to wash itself out, and there hasn't been a dominant narrative of the election. Whereas, in 2008, it was the economy is cratered, and we're going to punish somebody for that. We're going to vote for a candidate from a new party to try to fix this. And in 2020, it was we were through this pandemic, and there was this huge job loss and huge, all these terrible things were happening. And so we're gonna change who's in charge. And there's not that kind of issue that is clearly pushing us in one direction or another, as there often are in presidential elections.
Thank you for the question.
Right here. Up front.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Hi.
Hello.
Laura from Oregon.
Oregon. Nice.
Oregon. Oh, no, I got that wrong.
Oregon.
Yeah, not originally, clearly.
Oregon, the city, or
Yes.
the trail? Okay.
Yes.
Deal.
You guys have talked a lot about sensationalized media and just polarized parties. You even talked about independent or green parties and what that does to taking votes away. Where, for our primaries, you always have to do a partisan ticket. Why is that? And how do we change that so that those of us who don't align with individual parties can vote more in line with our beliefs across parties?
Interesting question. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a really good question.
Yeah, the parties don't want it. And so they're unlikely to change how they administer those elections. Like they're picking their party's candidate, for different offices. And so some states have open primaries where you don't have to be a member of the party to vote, but yeah, you only get to vote in one of them. You can't vote in both. And so it's just the parties don't see it as part of their incentives to give people a wider say. And I think, we can understand some of why that might be. So if there are two candidates and one is objectively terrible, the folks in the other party should vote for the objectively terrible candidate in their opponent's party and try to get them on the ballot, right? And so, there are reasons parties don't want to do that. And so it's really difficult to give folks a wide range of voice in the primary process. You could do it with your donations, you could do it with knocking on doors, but one person, one vote, even in the primaries.
Thank you for the question. Do you feel good about that? Any follow-ups? Real good. Okay.
Same
All right.
section a little bit farther back.
Solving no problems, but talking anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi. Mike, what do you make of Republicans being able to make more inroads with the working class vote, particularly with their previous stance on how, say, strikes go?
Yeah, I think that many voters are not making decisions on the criteria that people who are watching them would like them to make decisions on. So, it might be that their criteria is about a completely different issue that's not related to, is this candidate objectively good for my job or my business or my factory? It might be, I really, really care about abortion, or I really, really care about prayer in schools, or I really, really don't want to feel as though I'm not liked by my government. Like there is not a test we have to pass in order to demonstrate that we're casting our vote in a way that's related to public policy outcomes. We get to vote on anything that we want. And not everybody looks at, would this person be better for my bottom line? Would it be better for my community's bottom line? Would it be better for the country's economic, future or not? Some are looking at different kinds of things, from, gee, I'd like to have a beer with them, to I want to be in charge of what happens to my body, to I want them to make good decisions about foreign policy, to, I don't know, flipping a coin, voting. And all of those get the same vote.
That's reassuring. Thank you very much.
Back right center.
Got it.
Over here, yeah.
Hi, Charlie.
Hello.
Big fan.
Thank you. What's your name?
Tara. I just have two questions. First, what do you think about the new Glazer tins at Quick Trip?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you asked that. Them Glazers, I tell you what, they're never a bad idea.
Never.
Until they are, because you ate the whole damn box. But I'm a fan. I'm a fan of those
Okay,
new
good.
tins.
All right, they just dropped 50 ways to use a Glazer tin aside from putting donuts in it, so it's good. Okay,
more than 50.
I'm a mom of three. I'm a mom of three daughters, and one of them is 17, not turning 18 until next December. But she has lots of friends that are turning 18 or have turned 18 and are going to be able to vote, right? So wondering whether or not there are really places that they can go to get true information on both parties so that they can vote without having their parents in their ears or listening to ads, or whether or not there's anything that's really like going to break things down for them to vote educationally.
Yeah, that goes back to that's a great question. It goes back to the media diet, I guess, in a lot of ways.
I think, even outside of the news media, the League of Women Voters often provide really great information about the nuts and bolts of voting, but also, provide us ways of learning about issues. I would say just usually local newspapers often provide voter guides and give people a sense of where candidates stand on various issues. But it wouldn't be very hard, to even just, in this case, Google is your friend, right? So which candidate supports legal abortion federally, which candidate supports tax cuts for the wealthy, which candidate supports tax cuts for the middle. These are all things that you could find relatively accurate answers to relatively easily online. But I would say League of Women Voters is a great resource to learn about issues. For folks who are still in high school, I would also just ask their teachers where they think they should learn. A social studies teacher is waiting for a student to come to their desk and say, how do I learn about politics? But local newspapers are a great route because most of the votes they're going to cast are for people they probably haven't heard of. And it's the local newspaper or the local television station that's covering those county level candidates, those city level candidates, the school board candidates who are deciding what happens in the schools they're in. These are places that I would tell them to look in their local papers, and I would ask them to Google about the issues they care about the most and see where their candidates stand and make their decisions accordingly.
So in other words, Google it, he'll figure it out. We do have about time for 2 more questions. So, Colleen, you
Back
got
up
2.
front right here, right to your right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool.
There we go.
So going back to the advertisements, there's like a lot of negative stuff that we hear about. Do you think there's any like positive reinforcement stuff that we should be knowing about, like from both parties, either or? Or is there any positive news about it?
Yeah, we see positive ads usually under 2 circumstances. One is the race is not competitive. And so instead of trashing my opponent, I'll just talk about things that I do. Here's the things about my record that I think are good. Here's me walking through a wheat field at sunset with my family, those sorts of things. Right? And so we'll see those kind of positive ads that make us feel good when the race is not close. And we'll see them in the last couple of days before the election. Because one thing that positive information does is it reminds us of the team that we like. And so they're trying to make you remember, oh yeah, I like the Republicans, or I like the Democrats. I'm on this side for a reason. And it's not only because I hate the other side. There are other, and so so we see them in those regards, but we tend not to see them in really competitive races. Then it's the candidates' calculus is really about trying to tear the other side down as compared to talk about what they're going to do. And I would say this election's been notable for the almost absence of clear policy proposals that regularly get discussed on the campaign trail. You could be a very informed voter and have no sense of what both of these candidates want to do on most things most of the time.
Yeah, that's really annoying, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that goes back to journalism not having the power it once had, and then to your point, positivity and just being a good person. That seems to kind of go away in a lot of these situations with certain candidates or whatever. Is this drive toward the negative? Is there anything that people can do to say we like this more? I mean, if there's a nice commercial, or don't change the channel, they're talking good, or is there anything people can do, seek out that good stuff to hopefully amplify it?
I mean, we are in charge of what we talk about. We are in charge of what we like on social media, what we share on social media. We don't have to share John Oliver just destroyed this. We can just share, hey, look at this nice thing that happened. We could choose to do that.
Cat videos.
Yeah. Or it doesn't even have to be cat videos. It could be my city solved a problem, right? Kenosha filled the hole, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'd like to see AI do that, by the way.
Charlie, right here up front.
All right, one last question.
If we didn't get to your question, DM us on Instagram at Cripescast. We have another live one next week, so send them there. Here we go.
Nice plug, Colleen. I like that. That's good.
Hey, Charlie, my folks says hey.
Oh, well, tell your folks I says hi, okay? That's really good.
Yeah.
Have them watch for deer, too.
Yeah. Well,
the rut is on.
They're up there in Beaver Dam, so honk on your way by.
Oh, I did the ski jump in Beaver Dam one time. That's why I talk slower with a stutter sometimes. Yeah.
That's Waupun.
That's Waupun?
Yeah, sorry.
Beaver Dam, I think they got one. Oh, Waupun,
you must have really hit your head.
That's a joke. Damn, see? That's why you wear a helmet on those ski jumps, guys. God dang.
I kind of have a two-parter here. I'm wondering, would you agree that American politics could seriously benefit from a viable third party?
I don't know. Not if we don't change the rules of how we award who wins the election. Otherwise, it's one side is going to continue to get ripped off if the third party pulls from one of the two major parties as compared to the other. And so it's too risky in a system where if you get one more vote, you get all of the seats. And other systems where if your party wins 30% of the votes, you get 30% of the seats. So in that kind of system, it totally makes sense to have more than two political parties. But in this system, you're putting everything you care about at huge risk in a way that you're not if there's a third party that could pull away from your side. And we think about, this is going a slightly deep nerd dive, but it's near the end of the night. People have been drinking. I've been drinking. This is good. So when we talk about moderates, they are not all the same. Some moderates are libertarian. They want the government out of their lives. In the social world, don't tell me about my body. And they want low taxes. Don't charge me stuff. I don't want the government doing stuff. Don't tell me how to live. Don't tell me what to do with my money. Other people who are also moderates say taxes should be way higher on the wealthy to pay for social programs, and we should regulate a deeply Judeo-Christian set of moral values. And both of them, on a 5-point scale of how liberal or conservative are you, say 3. They are not the same. There's no centrist party. If there was one, they would just be one. The people in the middle are not the same. They're very different from each other. They're as different from each other as Republicans are from Democrats. They just don't have a team.
Damn, you really went down there on that, didn't you?
I side, spoiler alert, fair warning.
Didn't you? Nerding out.
Can I go with part 2 of that?
Yeah.
I have felt that we're at a place right now where there are a lot of Republicans who don't identify with the current Republican Party, but yet they cling to that title of being a Republican. Is that not an opportunity for them to start that viable third party as a more moderate party? And why haven't they done that?
I think they haven't done it for the same reason that the Tea Party is not a party that appears on a ballot, right? The Tea Party took over the Republican Party. And the Eisenhower and Reagan Republicans are now looking for a home, and their best strategy to getting back to winning elections would be to retake over the Republican Party and to say the people who say tons and tons of things that are not true and demonize the other side about silly things and take our attention away from the huge problems that we have are not the people we're going to elevate anymore. They would have to make that choice. Presently, they're not making that choice. But the best strategy for the Republicans who are wondering about strong defense, low taxes, live and let live, need to be more vocal. And there have been examples of Republicans who do that. Almost all of them have one word in common before the word Republican, and that's former, right? Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, former, Congressman whoever, former senator. It's people who leave the party who suddenly get courage. And that's true on the Democratic Party side, too. Nothing makes you braver than not having to run for re-election.
Just to piggyback on that, I think we were kind of close to a situation this year where there could have been like a really big third party. Like if Nikki Haley ended up getting the Republican nomination, Trump is a guy who could have self-funded, or he's got a bunch of rich friends, and he's got like that he wants it. So could you have seen, like, if Nikki Haley got the Republican nomination, that Trump would have like gone full bore into an independent party? Because you almost need like someone with that big of a following and that much money and name recognition in order to do it. Is that like a crazy scenario where it would happen?
I mean, you look at, Ralph Nader was really successful, very well known. Ross Perot, the most successful, 20% of the vote roughly, in 1992. Self-funded billionaire. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., made a little bit of noise, but super wealthy, right? And so, I'm not sure the wealthy iconoclast is our best model for a third party.
Oh, not best model, just how that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I don't know. I think it's very hard to predict what Trump would have done in that situation with any accuracy. I think that if Haley had won the nomination, Trump probably would have just tried to double down on Truth Social and his social. I don't know that he would have tried to run. His ground game, his organizational structure is not strong. And one thing that parties do is they make it easy to get your candidates' names on the ballot. They organize knocking on doors. They organize sending out, mailers to remind people to vote. And that's not his strength. His strength is capturing attention and turning that attention into a commodity. But that commodity is not the same thing as signing a petition to get you on the ballot, which is what you got to do in a third party.
Got it. Well, guys, give Mike a big round of applause for coming out here tonight. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you for hanging out, listening to this. Thank you so much. Everybody keep her moving, watch for deer, and as always, go Packers. And that's my campaign slogan. All right, good night, guys. Thank you.
All right, folks, thank you for listening. We really appreciate you. Shout out to Mike Wagner. You can follow him at ProWag on X. And if you are in Wisconsin, head to myvote.wi.gov for all the information you need about voting. That's checking if you're registered to vote, finding out how to register if you aren't already, where to vote, what's on your ballot, the whole deal. And once again, we're recording another Cripescast live next week. So if you have any other questions about the election, you can send them to cripescast@gmail.com, or you can come see us live at Vivarium. And you can ask your question live. It'll be a fun time. We'll see you guys there, and watch out for deer.
So roll out the barrel and get the band brewing. Life's got you down, just keep her moving. It's on Wisconsin, the Badgers say it's the old Wisconsin Jubilee.
You know, sometimes when you're ice fishing, you put your foot in the walleye hole and go ass over tea kettle, and you think you're done. No, you got to keep her moving.